Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I'm Sandra Cordova, Micek, and I'm President and CEO of WTTW and WFMT. And I've been in this role for about a year and 3 months or so. And this was actually one of the first events I went to last year. And I was actually struck by the passion that this audience has for what we do, some of the essential coverage that we provide in the city and the region, and that's really what Chicago Tonight and WTTW News do across all of our platforms, from television to the web to social media. So on behalf of everyone here tonight at WTTW, I wanted to thank you for joining us. We're actually here to celebrate everyone who supports our work, especially those of you who make what we do here at WTTW News and Chicago Tonight specifically possible. So thank you so much. I want to welcome you. Please also join me in thanking those members of our board who are here with us tonight, whose leadership supports the work that we do to produce and present trusted, best-in-class content. Our purpose as an organization, our DNA, if you will, is to enrich lives, engage communities, and inspire exploration. And at a time when the media landscape is changing and reliable sources for balanced reporting are a critical need, WTTW plays an important role in Chicago, bringing trusted, unbiased local news and analysis that reflects a diversity of perspectives and that just can't be found anywhere else. And we believe that this kind of local journalism really strengthens our democracy, and it fosters a sense of an engaged and an informed citizenry, all of you. And this is what makes what we do so essential to our community, and I hope you'll agree. So now I want to turn it over to Chicago Tonight's Alexandra and John Nichols, Chief Correspondent, Phil Ponce, to introduce our panel and start the show.
Before we get started, quick question. How many of you have been here before? Okay, how many first-timers do we have here? Fresh meat. We're really delighted to have you here. It tickles us to see you here because you are sort of the core of our core, and really it just, we're so pleased and so honored and so happy that you like what we do, because every night when we put our show together, we are thinking about you. We are thinking, okay, our audience is smart. What is it they want to hear? They're just as smart as us. The bar is high. We try to reach it. We don't necessarily reach it every night, but I will tell you that is our goal. And so we thank you for inspiring us to be the best that we can so that we can help to serve you. So many, many thanks.
Thank you.
Before I introduce the people at this table, people who need no introduction to you, I'd like to acknowledge some folks in the audience. We have some staffers here. Wave your hand if you're behind the scenes. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah. Somebody who likes to walk around incognito, Jeffrey Bear. Yeah. And then we have our new arts reporter, Angel. Please wave. And then the one and only Brandis Friedman, Brandis. And some of the folks from behind the scenes, our supervising producer, our segment producers, our online people. Please wave. These are the folks. These are the folks I like to call the hidden puppeteers. They pull our strings, and baby, we dance. So it's a real pleasure. It's a real pleasure for all of them, I know, to be here as well. Okay, our format tonight, we're going to. The four of us are going to have a conversation about ourselves that will hopefully give you some insights into how we cover local and state politics. So we'll talk about 25 minutes or so, and then we're going to open it up to questions from the audience, and our Brandis Friedman will be facilitating that, so you'll get to hear her. But now let me begin to introduce, by way of a reminder only, the people the inimitable Amanda Vinicky. The young but intelligent Schutz. And, seriously, the Dean of Chicago Journalism, Print, Broadcast, Radio. Honestly, there are a lot of political reporters in town. I think we have three of the best.
Yes.
And that's no put down of anyone else. There are a lot of good journalists in town, but honestly, the three people who bring you the stories about what's happening in the political life of the city, the area, and the state, and sometimes nationally, the three of them, I mean, they are top notch. Another round of applause. So, keeping in mind, colleagues, that brevity is the soul of wit, I'd like to ask you, each of you, just to share with people what a typical day of political reporting is like. Carol, I'll begin with you as the dean of all of us.
So frightening. So, 5 a.m., I take out my iPad, I go through the Sun-Times, the Tribune, the New York Times, Real Clear Politics, Capital Facts isn't usually up by then, and then a variety, Washington Post, just a variety of things. I am, as you may know, both at WTTW, I'm also the political editor at NBC. I make a regular call most days. Jay Smith, our executive producer, to figure out what's up on Chicago Tonight. I go into political meeting at NBC, and I get ready to teach students at DePaul University at the Center for Journalism, Integrity, and Excellence, because we have some phenomenal students, one of whom is here, Cody Corral, who's the John Calloway Fellow, who's there, right over there, who are taking us forward. So my day is full. It can be different every day. One morning I get a call. It's 4:30, and it said, "Better hit City Hall now." Ed Burke was being raided by the feds, and I needed to be there before anybody else. And so there are days like that. There are days that you plan that are different. And so it's a jump ball, Phil. It's a jump ball.
Well, Carol, let me, before I segue to Paris, we have some more of our behind-the-scenes folks in the back row there. I didn't see them. Would you please stand and be recognized? Again, more of the puppeteers I was alluding to earlier. And by the way, feel free to take as many pictures as you want, because we want this to be a candid, off-the-record conversation where we tell you stuff we wouldn't tell anyone else. Please don't record. Paris, give us a sample of what your day's like.
Well, to echo Carol's sentiments, the fun of this job is that no 2 days are alike. And so I don't wake up at 5 a.m., I have to say. I'm not a great morning person, but I wake
5 a.m. is when you're getting into the bed, I suppose.
I'll just say,
as I said, he's young.
at some point in the morning I wake up, and I read the periodicals that Carol mentioned, and when it's a day that I'm reporting, there's some days that I'm here in the studio hosting some segments, but a day that I'm reporting, I'll just give you as an example, this Monday, I did a story on General Iron, which is a scrap metal company in Lincoln Park that has a lot of controversy around it, because there's a lot of people that live there that don't like reading some of the stuff that they give off. So anyway, I did a story on that. I had my meeting on the phone with Jay around 9 a.m., our executive producer. Took the train. I knew that 3 aldermen I needed to interview were going to be at City Hall at a finance committee meeting. So I'm on the train, emailing other people involved in this story, seeing if they can go on camera, asking them to tell me what they think about this, setting up what time we can get down there and shoot it. We get to City Hall. I literally grab a couple of the aldermen like this. I need to interview you on General Iron. We do our interviews there, and then we shoot like a little walking and talking thing, for editing, the 60-minute shot where the reporter is walking with them. Totally authentic. Then we raced down to very happy about it. We went to the new location to shoot a stand-up, you know, and to kind of scope it out. Then we went to the north. We went to General Iron in Lincoln Park, where we got some shots of them smashing cars and trucks and buses and turning it into scrap metal. Interviewed a spokesperson for the owner. The owner was there and said, he talked to me in the conference room, said, but I'm not going to go on camera. Here's my spokesperson. And I said, okay, fine. So we interviewed the spokesperson there. By this point, it's about 2:30. We rushed back to the studio. I try to quickly log what we've gotten. Go down with our editor. This was like 5:30. Smash it together. And then by 7 o'clock.
So like General Iron.
Yeah, like it. And so 7 o'clock, just to be ready by 7 o'clock to go on the air and to report the story. So that's an example of it's not every day like that, but that's can be a very hectic day. So that's kind of a day in the life of day of reporting.
And Amanda, before we get to you, there's another group of people that really need to be acknowledged, aside from the folks you've already met, and that is the board of WTTW has made such a commitment to Chicago Tonight. Sandra, Cordova, Micek, and the leadership of the station, putting on a nightly show like this is not just a commitment of resources, but a commitment of spirit and a commitment of responsibility. And so our thanks to station leadership and to the board for their continuing faith in Chicago Tonight. They've been doing it for decades, and I'm telling you, at any point in time, we are one of two, maybe three shows in the country that do this. We are the longest standing show of this kind that does local news analysis and presentation of culture. So a round of applause for the leadership.
Also, all around here are our studio crew, our camera crew, people in the building who may not be part of Chicago Tonight, but we couldn't live without them. They are here. We wouldn't be doing this without them too.
Amanda, tell us, give us an example of a typical day of reporting. You straddle two worlds. I mean, local politics and Springfield. I mean, Springfield is where you, one might say, you cut your teeth down there, but you know what's happening locally too. What is your day like?
Okay, so I would first like to say, again, acknowledge what you talked about, and that is how rare something like Chicago Tonight is, because I had not realized that when I started working here full-time about 2.5 years ago, that it was such an anomaly in the world of PBS, which to me was very surprising, because particularly from somebody with a public radio background, like, everybody does that sort of thing. It's public media. What else do you do? And so it's very surprising to me, but I think so important that we have a program like this that holds civic leaders accountable, and that we have an hour that is devoted to dissecting whatever the news of the day, the week, in the case of pensions, the century is. So with that, I would say a typical day, there is really no such thing. And we'll piggyback a lot of what Paris said, in that it is a lot of paranoia, is how I would describe it, really. You're constantly checking. It's not just whenever it is that you wake up, checking all of the websites, reading the newspaper, again, turning on public radio, catching up on what have you. But further constantly checking Twitter, refreshing my Outlook inbox at all points in time to see when a press release comes through, when suddenly, if I was not lucky enough to get the 4:30 a.m. call, like run to City Hall because Ed Berg is in deep doo-doo. But checking Twitter, you very quickly realize, oh gosh, there's somewhere that I have to be, change course from whatever it was that I was in the middle of doing. So I think that is probably the thing to take away most about a typical day in journalism, is that it is really not your day. The day is given over to the news, and whatever that is.
Well, given that the three of you are in a position to make observations and to see things that we don't necessarily report, I guess I would really be interested in any insights you can give into Mayor Lightfoot as a person, as a political leader. Any anecdotes? Carol, let's begin with you.
So Lori Lightfoot, I first encountered when Mayor Daley was in the hired truck scandal, and he was really trying to clean it up and look like he was a reformer. It wasn't looking that way at the moment. And so he had to redo the Department of Procurement, which hired the hired trucks, and which also goofed around with minority and women-owned businesses because they were all political pawns, they were phony companies, they were phony women-owned companies. And so he hired Mary Dempsey, who was at the library commissioner, excellent reputation. Her second in command that she brought over was Lori Lightfoot, former assistant U.S. attorney, and they brought over also an FBI agent named Ron Grossman, and they came to reconstitute that department. So my first encounter with Lori Lightfoot, serious as a heart attack, no question about that, and deeply a former Fed. And the reason that's important to me today is it is both her strength and possibly her weakness, because the Feds always have a kind of overarching sense that they wear the whitest of white hats. They are above any question. And so Lightfoot both has that insistence on justice and finding the truth, but also a fairly strong sense of superior self. And these can sometimes be you're up and you're down. And so she's been swatting aldermen like flies, and that has shown that she's ready to take control. But sometimes you can hit a fly with an anvil, and it's a bit of overkill. And so my experience with her is on the spectrum, deeply smart, but city government is like governing a whale. When you're at the front, you don't know what the tail looks like. And so it is deeply problematic. I think it's way, way, way too soon to figure out how it's all going to go.
Paris, your impressions, stories that you've seen, anecdotes.
Right, I've known her for a few years, just interviewing her on different issues, and I was surprised when I heard the talk that she was going to run for mayor. I never considered her to be a deeply ideological person because she was a lawyer at Mayor Brown, and so she would take the positions of her clients, and they were all over the political spectrum. She represented Republicans in the gerrymandering case. And she first came to prominence, I think, in this current era because Rahm Emanuel called her, much like Daley did, to head the police reform task force, which task force is political speak for I'm going to punt this issue to the future and make it look like I'm doing something and buy myself about 6 months. So, and hope it goes away. And so Lori Lightfoot this was in the wake of the Laquan McDonald controversy, and Lori Lightfoot's, I interviewed her, and her first words to me were like, I don't think there was a cover-up. I think that everything that the city could control, it did correctly. So she was kind of defending the mayor, and then over time, as the task force came out with its report, and it was scathing on the police department, and the mayor Rahm did not expect that. And what he also didn't expect was, when he adopted only about half of the reforms that she had, her and her task force had recommended, she went public and started sort of ripping into Rahm for not doing more, and he felt stabbed in the back. So it's why she kind of sensed a political opening here, and I pulled up a text message that I sent her when I heard the rumors that she was thinking of running. And because I didn't think she was interested in this. She doesn't have that kind of political charisma that you would think. But she actually turned out to have her own kind of charisma. And I said, are you running? And she said, hey, Paris, always good to hear from you. As I've said many times, I'm focused on making progress on issues where I think I can add value, blah, 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 no answer. I said,
She's running.
She's running. So,
I take that as a yes.
exactly. That's my Lori Lightfoot story.
Amanda, how about it?
I will add, because I think that both of my colleagues are accurate, and particularly Carol in talking about how her prosecutorial experience is at once seen as refreshing in this same sense, but from obviously a totally different point of view, that Donald Trump was refreshing to voters and that he spoke what was perceived to be candid. That I think is something that people like about Lori Lightfoot to a degree. She still does that, and yet that's also has and may continue to get her into trouble, particularly most recently she was before Crane's editorial board, made a comment about pensions and the coal as being unsustainable. And like, that's a comment that's on the record. It's not going to go away. She's kind of tried to say, hey, no, that's not what I meant, but that will be out there forever. So still very much mourning, even though she has been in the political space. It is something that I would guess her handlers want her to shush up. And at the same time, it is part of what makes her this refreshing politician to a degree. I will add, though, that much as she is very serious, she's funny. I mean, she can crack a joke. She has a sense of humor. When I have interviewed her and, you know, we're in the setup and such, I forget what it was, but I cracked a joke and I kind of sang a lyric from a song, and she chipped in and sang with me. So she can be kind of fun and very, very witty.
So a lot of people were predicting perhaps a new incarnation of council wars, wherein the mayor was fighting with the city council over setting the city's agenda, spending the city's, allocating the city's resources. Colleagues, how would you assess her relationship with city council right now?
Evolving.
Evolving?
So on Wednesday, we did our political spotlight, and I said, there was the Verdoliak 29, that was the opposition bloc for Harold Washington. Right now, there's the Ed Burke 3. There's three aldermen that are trying to throw her off her game with kind of parliamentary tricks, thinking that they can take this novice and screw around with her, and she's proven herself game at every kind of curveball they try to throw. So first there was Ed Burke, who got up and started saying, you know, these rules you're about to adopt, the pronouns are just he, and they should be he, she. And she cited some steps to say, she turned the tables and was a prosecutor on him, cross-examined him, sat him down and said, Alderman, don't stand up until I call on you. And it happened again on Wednesday, Ray Lopez. So the three are Ray Lopez, Anthony Beale, Ed Burke. Ray Lopez got up, tried to do a parliamentary thing again, thinking that maybe she doesn't know the parliamentary rules. She's a lawyer. She's been a prosecutor for 30 years. She knows these rules. She swatted him back down. So there's some thinking, these things have fallen flat, but there's some observers that think that there might be a latent opposition, and these three aldermen are trying to kind of like lead the way, send the first ripples out there, and, you know, Lori Lightfoot's, the mayor's going to have to close an $838 million budget gap. It's going to be a very difficult vote, and some aldermen are predicting that that's where you can see a more organized opposition, because most aldermen who even support her now still don't quite know what to make of her, you know, and they'll say privately they don't like the way she treated Ed Burke or Ray Lopez in those moments, that she was too harsh on them, and that's going to come back to haunt her. So we don't know, but Lightfoot so far has proven to be pretty adept politically to keep this coalition together.
And how would you assess how much political capital she still has? After all, she won overwhelmingly. She won every ward in the city. How much does she have left in the bank?
Declining. And so it is. You buy a new car, and all of a sudden, you know,
It depreciates quickly.
it depreciates, boom. This is the difficulty with anyone, not just Lori Lightfoot, anyone that walks in the door. And the thing that shocks all of them is that voters are grateful to bring them in, but not grateful once they're there, and they forget that they asked for the job. Voters didn't beg them for the job, they volunteered. And that's where the rubber's going to meet the road, especially when we deal with this fiction of marijuana's going to save us, and casinos are going to save us, and none of us will feel any pain from a revenue measure. Well, get over it, all of us. I mean, we just need to kind of say, wake up, Susie. This is going to be really hard, and that's going to be her challenge. She went down to Springfield, Amanda's stomping ground, and said to J.B. Pritzker right away, and everybody stood up for selfies, they're like Elizabeth Warren, and then she said, and we want you to resolve Chicago's debt, and they said, no. And so she's got to go back again, and these are the tests, the enormous tests of a leader of any city, and if we hit a recession, Katie, bar the door, because that's going to change the terms of this engagement even further.
So is there, I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, is there a consensus among the three of you that one way or the other, those of us who live in the city are simply going to have to pay more property tax or some other taxes, that we are ultimately going to be the answer to this $838 million shortfall?
As Marion Santos regretted saying on a federal wiretap, belly up to the bar, boys.
Yeah.
Yes. I think, as Carol said, I mean, she asked for the job, she ran for it, and so you hear politicians saying, well, this is hard. You might not realize how difficult it is. And I had an elected official say that to me recently. He said, yes, I do. I'm discovering this. What do you think? That I'm not aware that it's difficult? That doesn't mean that it's forgiving, and it doesn't mean that we're going to feel bad for you. You asked for it. You're the one that told all of us in commercials and ads ad nauseum that you were going to be able to make it better. So, do so. It is going to be hard. There are not easy answers when it comes to the state, when it comes to the city. So yes, I don't know what exactly that formula will look like. I do want to add in terms of just the mayor's relationship with aldermen and legislators. Like you said, she has cachet because she won in such a monster fashion. At the same time, she does not have a ton of deep relationships with many of the aldermen, and that is something that sets her apart from her predecessors and could prove a little more difficult when you are arm twisting, when you're asking for a favor. She may not have as many of those favors to call in. She is fundraising. She's been successful. We've seen her, be sort of get the national spotlight time and again, and she may continue to do so. She remains a novelty and a good interview, but that doesn't necessarily win her points back here. So that could prove to be quite a challenge.
Rahm Emanuel was also an unknown commodity to City Council when he came in 9 years ago, but he's so proud to say he's a good parliamentarian. He knows how to whip people into voting for stuff. But he's like, I knew what all 50 of the top 4 things that all 50 aldermen needed, and I could hold that against them. And he had the dirt on them, and he knew what they needed. So
and he knew people in politics really well.
And he had no problem getting them to vote with him because he played the game that they like, which was, you give me the stuff for my ward and I'm going to vote for your initiatives. And they don't like that Mayor Lightfoot. Some of them say, she hasn't called me to meet with me yet. And like, well, have you called her? Like, no, she should be calling me. So they don't like this new game. They like the old game.
Well, speaking of personal relationships, let's take it to the state level. How would you describe it? Amanda, I'll begin with you since you spend more time in Springfield than just about anybody I know. How would you describe the relationship between the governor and Mike Madigan?
Ooh, I don't think that they are particularly close by any means. They're sort of existing in their own spaces, and that is in their own best interests at this point in time. Pritzker has not made a point of going at Mike Madigan as Bruce Rauner did, and we all saw how that turned out. Instead, I think it is a lot of what you saw get accomplished in Springfield may not have been, for example, what Mike Madigan's deepest desires wanted. He wanted them because it worked for his members politically. Pritzker is a Democrat that's not fighting him. Pritzker is a Democrat with lots of cash. And so it is, again, in his interest to work with the governor. They are not close buddies. They are not tight. Nonetheless, I think it is quite fair for journalists to continue to ask questions of both the governor and any other legislator, particularly House Democrats, what they think about the speaker, given that he has become a lightning rod, in part due to Bruce Rauner, in part because of Me Too, in part because of just how long his longevity and where Illinois is at fiscally, and to ask where they stand. Thus far, we have not gotten good answers from Governor Pritzker about that. He doesn't like to talk about it, but we need to, I think, keep asking, because certainly they are both leading, they have plenty of influence, including with one another.
Before we go to the audience, any insights on that question, the Pritzker-Madigan relationship from either Carol or Paris?
Mike Madigan is the most disciplined politician I have ever met. And I say that with a certain amount of awe, respect, and deep curiosity. He is someone who knows every nuance of a piece of legislation. What does that do? It means that he can defeat just about anyone who isn't working as hard as he works to get something done. You may not like what he gets done, but if you're going to work against Madigan, you've got to put in 180% more effort than he has over these years. He doesn't carry a cell phone. Why are there no federal wiretaps of any extensive variety? Okay, because he doesn't have a cell phone. He is deeply disciplined. He believes in the institution of state government, but he also more profoundly believes in holding his own power.
But let's remember that we thought that Ed Burke was deeply, deeply disciplined, and they're not the same. And I don't want to just say because Ed Burke's in trouble that means Mike Madigan is, but they're such similar politicians, and they both have the similar public role and private role. In private, they are property tax attorneys. They use their platform to be able to get business for their firms to lower people's property taxes, which means you all pay more because you have to pay one level of property taxes. And everyone was surprised because they thought Ed Burke was the smartest guy in the city council, and yet he's caught on wiretaps allegedly saying, "Where's the cheese? You know, why aren't the cash registers clanking?" But
It was tuna.
Tuna.
it wasn't cheese?
No, it's
Tuna.
tuna.
Where's the tuna?
The difference is though, Ed Burke will come into a gathering, some dinner, and he will have his two bodyguards talking in their wrists as they're bringing him his martini. You don't see that with Mike Madigan.
Ed Burke will sit and play the piano.
You don't see the same suit. You don't see the same demeanor. And sometimes that tells you something. Maybe it doesn't tell you enough, but it is a distinction with a difference.
Let's open it up to any questions that we have from the audience. And Brandis, there you are. First of all, Brandis, we've not asked you to weigh in on any of the topics that heretofore addressed. Is there?
I could not.
Is there any? Are there any observations you'd like to make about your day, about your role in Chicago tonight, and your view of the universe from your perspective?
My view, you don't want to know that.
Oh, come up front so people can see you.
So, what is it like? What is it like to work with Phil Ponce?
I consider
Lucky
myself
you.
so lucky to work with. I think all of us consider ourselves lucky
We do.
to work with both Phil and Carol. I think the three of us can say that we definitely learn a lot from these two, and we're grateful to work with them and learn from them. My day is a little bit different, I think, from Harrison and Amanda's in that I think they're kind of like, keeping up with the political story of the day. I cover education, most of you know that, and so education isn't quite happening the same way every day, especially in the summer, although there were a couple of summers ago, education was really busy. That time they didn't have a budget. So I usually kind of know what's going on and whether or not something is happening that day that we need to follow. So I think we're all on the phone somewhere in the 9 to 10 o'clock hour, kind of figuring out what's happening. Usually when I wake up in the morning, I know what's happening with regard to education, right? Whether or not there's something. So next week, for example, I know the CTU is taking a 3-day vote on their strike. The Board of Education has a board meeting on Wednesday. Honestly, I'm not expecting a whole lot to come out of that. I think the strike is going to be the big thing next week, and we know that SEIU, they have authorized a strike as well, I think, because their fact finders report is back, and they disagreed with it the way CTU did. So if I think there's something education related going on that day, hopefully, I left work the day before knowing at least who I need to call and nail down what time can I meet with you to get your interview and where else we need to go to get video. I make a few phone calls to people who are sources who I cannot get an interview with on camera just to get a little bit of background. And then, like these guys, hopefully pull it together for the afternoon. If I'm not doing, the education debrief that day, maybe I'm hosting or maybe I'm producing another segment or hosting another segment. So I check in with Jay and or the producer who's producing that segment to kind of figure out what we're doing that day and what I need to be ready for. Am I hosting multiple segments, or am I just going to produce the updates at the top of the show and one segment later on? It just depends. So.
Brandis, I think you're bearing the lead. Brandis is the only person on staff who has two young children.
Which is why I don't get here until 10:30. I literally cannot come earlier.
Brandis, thank you for helping facilitate the next 20 minutes or so, and that is questions from the audience. Is there any question that any of you have regarding the pearls of wisdom that have been dropped so far in front of you?
Where are we starting?
Go ahead.
Who's your point to? Sorry.
Brandis,
You know what? I've got the microphone, so I'm just going to pick.
I'm Barbara O'Connor.
Hey there, Barbara.
Hello. The best program on TV.
God bless you.
What it is. The three now, having gone through many years of the friends and enemies in the city council, give me your take on these three new young anti-mayor fighters for what they think is their world. Carol, why don't you start? You've done it.
I just actually did an interview with an alderman, one of these quite establishment aldermen, and he said, I met with these kids, and he said, they said, I'm not sure we should be talking to you. And he said, well, you should talk to somebody. And he said, they're smart. They're very smart. But they're also learning, and I think they come from an ideological direction. But here's the thing about government, and I'm not defending old hardline aldermen any more than I'm not defending young ones. But when you see a politician, any politician, campaign and say, I don't need to know government, I'm not a politician, I was in business, I can do this, well, good luck. Because it's like, I want a brain surgeon. I don't want a brand new one. I want one who's been around a while, who knows the wheels of the hospital, the government. So, to his credit, he sat down with the young socialists. He said, they don't like police, and they don't like that I like police. But there's something in the middle here that everybody's going to have to learn from. I think there are a lot of possibilities with these young aldermen, but I'm telling you, they've got a learning curve that they need to fully appreciate, because otherwise they're going to lose a vote. And the whole goal is to win the vote. So that's my take.
Another question from the audience, please. Brandis, you pick.
Okay. Well, the fewest steps that I can take.
Hi, my name is Trudy, Leong, and I'm station manager at WCRD Chicago at Northeastern.
Oh, good for you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. And our mission statement actually is to provide news that isn't available elsewhere. So I really love what all you are doing. As to accountability and transparency, what is Mayor Lightfoot doing to improve that?
Well, she's vowed to improve that. That's one of the main, the main platforms that she ran on. But we were just having this discussion today with another journalist from WBZ, Carol and I. She passed a new ordinance that would have the Inspector General release reports to the public if it involved a murder or a felony that would be in the public interest. So this is in response. He did a big investigation on the police after Laquan McDonald, but it was not. The law in Illinois is that an IG cannot release its report to the public unless the agency that it's investigating allows it, which seems completely
Counterintuitive.
But what this reporter from BZ was saying was that they sent in a Freedom of Information request to Mayor Lightfoot, and they got something back heavily redacted. And they've hired a lawyer to sue now, and they don't understand why, the rationale for why the Lightfoot administration redacted their requests so heavily. So, politicking is much different than governing. And then you're in government, and you realize, well, I said I was going to shine the light on everything, but it might not be in my best interest to shine the light on everything. So, she's certainly made some steps toward transparency. But it's not, I think the jury's out. The jury's out at this point.
She has done some basic things, like streaming of committees and city council meetings. So give credit for that if you will, although doesn't that seem to be obvious and done? How on earth has that not been happening? You know, I mean, so it's like she did really the easy stuff, but it'll be getting to the nitty gritty. Nonetheless, the easy stuff is long overdue.
Brandis?
I've got a microphone over here, so it's Brandis.
Oh, okay, great. That's Jay Smith,
can't walk
supervisor
that far.
producer. Jay, could you pick somebody from this side?
Sure.
Thank you so much. My name is Lanny Wilson. I think that one of the reasons why Donald Trump is president today is because much of news is like the National Enquirer. They're looking for sensationalistic news. I think most of the people in this room, and I think the people on the panel certainly are not that way. And therefore, my question is, should news be like Walter Cronkite, you don't really know where you stand, nice and neutral, just kind of tell it like it is? Or do you think that news should help us in a moral way, bring us to something that looks like the common good?
I don't trust anyone's morality, is the answer. And Walter Cronkite didn't impose his, as you point out. That I believe in principled ethical reporting. I think where we fail, and where we have failed, is that we do not sufficiently explain to the public the difference between the cable broadcasts owned by NBC and others, and CNN, versus the mainstream broadcasts like the CBS, NBC, ABC News. And so, what's the difference between Rachel Maddow and NBC? Well, significant, in my view. And so Lester Holt is an entirely different, lane in the highway. And this is where we have confused the public, and frankly, I'm at a point where I don't watch any of the cables very much. I don't watch CNN, MSNBC, or Fox, except sparingly, because I'm sick of their opinions, I'm sick of the polarization, and I am desperately looking to make my own informed decision. And that's where I think establishment news has a deep and important and abiding value, and I'd argue you have to read as many outlets as you can to make your own, thought pattern on this.
And
I would turn Garrison Keeler, I think it was, say something to the effect that if you attempt to make yourself sort of the star of the enterprise, that's a losing battle, because you can be interesting for, I don't know, a few months maybe, but then, in terms of just your own self-interest, you're going to be boring to people. What will never be boring is if you present information that is always relevant. And so from a purely selfish standpoint, I think all of us want to present material that is relevant, and the only material that's relevant for people like you is material that's factual. We respect your intelligence. We try to present opposing points of view. You know why? You figure it out. You're smart. Do it. Another question.
Bill,
Jay?
I got one over here.
Good.
I just happened to appear here.
Hi, I have a quick question for Carol Marin. One of my most memorable moments in watching Chicago tonight was an interview that you were doing where you would ask somebody about the state's fiscal cliff. It had been going on for so long at that point, and you just said, when is this going to end? And between the people who are leading the state and the credit rating, do you believe that we now have a better idea as to how this is all going?
No. And here, I don't. I think that there are efforts underway, but consider that Governor Pritzker wants a graduated income tax. That will take at least 3 years, if it passes all of its different hurdles, to happen, which may somehow normalize the production of some revenue. If we hit a recession, it's going to throw that more into some serious doubt. If the economy continues to do well, we may see some surpluses. But the fact of the matter is that we still don't have the coherent sort of fiscal sense of what must be done and how it must be done. And so Chicago, Illinois, the suburbs that all have pension crises, I mean, we're past the point of the crisis. we are halfway down the cliff. And so I'm deeply concerned about it, and I don't see, and I think Amanda, as I watch her nod, who lives in Springfield all the time, these are deep and abiding problems.
To give you an example for Chicago, if a recession hits, last year the market had a dip at the end of the year, and it actually closed below where it had began that year, and the market had been really hot. What that did to the pension funds in Chicago was cost them $200 million. So taxpayers have to shell out the deficit this year, the budget is $200 million worse because all those pension investments, which rely on a very generous rate of return, they're anticipating we're going to get 9% every year in our investment. It actually, they did not only not get 9%, but the market had drawn down. That meant the cities, your taxpayer debt went up $200 million, and we're not even in a recession. If the recession hits, that's just the case.
And I think there remains, despite Democrats being in control of all of state government in Chicago, there is still, everybody is still looking out for number one. And it's not that Mayor Lightfoot and Governor Pritzker don't get along per se, but they don't give a hoot really that much about the other problems because they have their own to solve. So while sure, we could see a Chicago casino deal, that'll likely happen, but is that the solution to all of everything? Of course not, no. And so that's a difficulty, and while we're waiting for this graduated income tax situation to play out, everything else, at least on the state level, I think is going to be shelved. It will make it all the more difficult for Mayor Lightfoot to be able to get the legislature to go along with some of her alternative asks for what she needs the state's blessing for. She can do a property tax, sure, but a lot of the other major things that she wants to do to close that budget hole, she'll need the state. And they're not going to want to give it, nor is the state going to. There is a task force. We all know what those stand for. Thank you, Paris. The punt committees. And they are supposed to be taking up property taxes. That is a very difficult issue, and nobody's having the true conversation about how to solve that. Should there be a service tax, statewide service sales tax? All of that's waiting for this graduated income tax constitutional amendment. We don't even know, of course, how that will turn out. So when Carol noted, when it gets past those hurdles, or if that gets past those hurdles, it's really a big hit.
Brandis, this portion of the audience has not been heavily represented.
Well, they are excited as well.
It's like gerrymandering.
Appreciate it. I'm going to start here, and we'll try and work our way around a little bit.
Hi, I'm Steve Liebert, and I've been in town for 6 years now. And so this is a historical question because I don't have that. So I think Rom did a lot of good and a lot of bad things. But one of the questions I have is the city in any worse or better shape than when he started?
And the answer is both. If you look around, places like the West Loop and Logan Square and Pilsen are developing, they're attracting. He was a fan of saying 6 years in a row, #1 for corporate relocations. Turns out he's right. I mean, Chicago has been the #1 city for corporations relocating their headquarters here. I mean, it could be a small company, large company. There's a growing tech sector. There are signs that the economy here is diversifying and that it's good. And so here's what's happening. The city is gaining educated professionals. It is losing poor and minority residents that can't deal with the crime and the costs. And these two things, if the city keeps draining population like that, we're not going to have people to pay the taxes and all this debt that we just talked about.
And if you're a Chicago firefighter, or a Chicago teacher, or a Chicago police officer, and you have to, by ordinance, live in the city, the question is where and how? And can you afford that mortgage and the taxes that go with it? And so it is a profound problem for a livable middle class. And that's the thing we're in such grave danger of losing as wealthier people, retirees and young people, come to the city. But where's the middle class that really anchors and roots, they're the roots of the garden.
There was a map, just the other day on a story there, I was shown this map of each ward, and middle class, lower class, middle class, upper class, and in 1970, the yellow represented middle class. There was a lot of yellow on that map. Blue represented, wealthy, not so much blue. Red represented lower income. There was a good deal of that. And then fast forward to now, that map is blue on the north side and red, a whole lot of red everywhere else. So depending on where you are in the city, it's the best of times for Chicago. It is the best of times in many neighborhoods. It's never been better. And in the south and the west side, it's about the same as it has been for about 30 or 40 years, where there's divestment and there's crime. And Rahm Emanuel, I think he was great, and this is a criticism, he was great for downtown. He was great for West Loop and for the north side. And I'm not going to say that he didn't try for the south side and the west side, but it's not much different there than it was 8 years ago.
Brandis, another question, please.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Vince, and I'm going to take it off that subject for a moment, because something occurred to me that you started oh, by the way, Carol, I think I first saw you when you first arrived here, and I have admired
But I was much younger.
Well, I'm not very that old,
Thank
but
you.
I've admired you from day one. I just wanted to say
Thank you
that.
very much.
You all start a day with a certain expectation of what it's going to be. How often does it ever end up that way? Or that it just gets off the bobble because of something?
Sometimes, let me tell you, when Phil began by saying, what's your day like? It made me think of my mother, who has left the earth a while ago. When I started at Channel 5 in Chicago, she would call every afternoon after the newscast and say, your story was, what, about 2 minutes long on that street gang that the feds are investigating? Oh, yeah, Mom. So what'd you do the rest of the day? and we did that, we had that conversation every time. Every day is a surprise. Every day is, and sometimes not a good one, but often, this is the most exciting job I can imagine ever having, because there isn't a day, for good or for bad, that I don't learn something. That it doesn't bring some amazement, maybe some sorrow, maybe some pathos, it all depends. There isn't a day that isn't some sort of small or great revelation.
Jay, somebody on this side of the audience?
Okay, hi, Leong, CPS teacher here, and I'm just amazed at when watching the news. It's always very sad. It's also very, what can I say? I'm nervous actually.
That's okay.
It's very, okay. We're talking about crime, we're talking about guns, we're talking about things that, where is the peace? Okay, where's the good? Because there is more good out there. But it seems like the focus is always on somebody getting killed, shot, etc. Okay, I'm sorry to say this, but I'm a teacher trying to get a peace festival at our school. This is the second time I'm doing this. Trying to get media out there. Unless somebody's getting shot, can't get anybody at the school.
Can I disagree with you on that?
Okay.
Because I think sometimes it's what pierces us most that we remember. One of my complaints about local news is that they've stopped doing the serious stories enough, and they do more, here's this Broadway play, here's somebody's getting an award, here's McDonald's has new French fries.
And oh, by the way, the weather.
And by the way, too much weather, forgive me. But, okay. So sometimes I think, I know what you're seeing, but sometimes I think we go to the thing that worries us the most. And sometimes, in my experience, we're doing too many of the ram running around on the highway and the alligator in the lagoon, and not enough of, and part of this is, when we do the shooting, we also need to do the background of the shooting. We need to know more than just somebody got killed. or somebody got shot. But sometimes I think it isn't, it's more imbalanced for me sometimes in the happy feature without the substance of a more serious story.
Okay, to just kind of be a cheerleader for Chicago tonight, I mean, I think we do try to feature voices from the south and the west side, or areas where there are terrible troubles. Voices of people who are trying to make, like yourself, people who are trying to make a difference in those communities, like the Becoming a Man program, or we had Father Flager last night, who was controversial, no doubt. But if you talk to anybody that's in that parish, St. Sabina, they know that he walks the walk, that he's down there doing basketball tournaments, doing what he can. And we know that there are people in every neighborhood that are wonderful people, that are bright light in those neighborhoods, that they're like what you're doing. They are trying to bring their neighborhood together to solve this. And we try to feature those people. We try to give them a platform.
We need to hear
And
more of
I
this,
can't speak for the other news, but I
And
know that we try to.
I really appreciate Chicago tonight because you all make that difference. You're telling us that there is hope, okay? You're giving us another point of view that we don't get on the other channels.
And we're learning about the things that people like you and other peacemakers in the neighborhoods are doing, and we're learning about that, and we're trying to give that a platform, because this is part of the story. The story isn't that these are dangerous neighborhoods, but the story isn't it's just one big war zone 24/7. The story is there's a mix of people here, some that are trying to do amazing things, trying to bring these neighborhoods back, and that's part of the Chicago story, and we want to tell that story, and we do need to talk about crime in the context of why is this happening. Police aren't solving crimes. There's divestment. There's a code of silence. What is that code of silence like? Why don't people come forward? All of these are aspects of the story.
We have time for a couple more questions, for two more questions. Brandis, what do you think?
Okay, there's a young lady on the front row, a gentleman in the back. Hello.
I'm a proof action Chicago tonight, and I watch it rigorously. But I'm curious, when you're in, and you have to be unbiased, when you're interviewing a totally obnoxious person, has the complete opposite viewpoint as you do, and try to keep them calmed down, how do you deal with that?
If I may attempt that.
Yes.
You are there not, we are not there as individuals. We are there to represent you. An interview is a conversation designed to elicit information on behalf of an unseen audience, somebody who's not there. We're doing it for you. So when I'm in that situation, I don't think, oh, I am so annoyed, this person is so irritating. If I let myself think that, I probably could, but that's not why I'm there. I'm there to get the best substance out of that person so that you at home that person can reveal him or herself to you. Even though they might be obnoxious to me, they're not obnoxious to somebody else, if they didn't have something to say, we wouldn't have them on the program. And my job is to do my job for you. And that involves keeping myself out of it as much as possible, being calm, and trying to get something out of that person.
And I've learned from Phil. I've interviewed Mayor Emanuel a lot on this program, and I get that question. Weren't you just so annoyed? He was acting so arrogant, and he was trying to put you down, and I get it so much. Everyone wonders if I'm annoyed or if I felt like he was trying to put me down. No, I actually smirk in those moments. I think they're hilarious because Mayor Emanuel, if he's talking down to me, it means he's talking down to you, the viewer. And as Phil said, I don't think an big ego goes very well with this job, even though you've heard of anchors every now and then having egos. But because it's not me, it's not a slight at me. He's doing this and he doesn't realize that there are people watching at home that think he's disrespecting them, and it's not going to work for him every time he does that. So it just makes me kind of smirk a little bit.
To me, the strength of a quality interview is one that lets a person's personality shine through, and it is our job to both get that out and to try and get whatever it is that you really think. And that is particularly difficult with politicians who, as a job, try to protect those notions and just give you the lines. And so, sure, give somebody leash a little bit sometimes to be, if you perceive it as obnoxious, somebody else might be applauding that from their TV and saying, hey, yeah, right on. So it's facilitating whatever it is that brings about, in hopefully an earnest and true conversation. Though I have watched some stories where people really went at it. And it's those difficult panels where I think, Phil, I've watched you handling them, where you say, all right, everybody, calm down. And it's moderating, and it really is that. It's taking a step back and inserting yourself in the conversation only to the point so that there can actually be one, because our objective is not to look like cable news where there's an all-out war and they think they're going to get greater ratings. We believe that a real conversation is one where you can hear people talk and hear what they're saying.
We have time for one more question. I'm going to let you make a call.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Peter Buckingham, and I have just moved to Illinois a year ago from New Hampshire. And the reason that I come this evening is because I'm so impressed with Chicago Tonight.
Oh,
And
thank
while
you.
I was a selectman in New Hampshire for a number of years, 14 to be specific, the reason that I appreciate especially Paris Schutz's aspect to this program is because I feel that he is as neutral and as true-sided to both presentations as can be made. And I really appreciate listening to him, but that's not to say, as you have pointed out yourselves, that's not to say that any of the others of you on the panel are not also both sided. This whole program, it makes me want to watch you all the more, even though I've only been here for a year, I'm going to watch you forever.
Well, thank you.
And you're pointing out things that we didn't know.
And we didn't know sometimes.
And we didn't know at all about, this particular event that was happening. And thank you. Thank you for bringing joy to my life.
That ends our audience participation. But I say, let's give Pete Buckingham a round. And welcome to Chicago and welcome to NRT. Thank you so much. At this point, what is our next item on the agenda, Madam President?
New business.
We have microphones, we can just take it.
Oh,
We are going to do tours at the studio for those who want.